Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a nice weekend, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And it looks like Liz Cheney's received some more bad news concerning the January 6th sham trial SM that continue to be aired on television, which nobody's watching over in the country. Everybody's tired of this sham banana republic type of court hearings that are only resulting on one side being heard, and most Americans can see this game for what it is. This is their attempt in order to ensure that they can't have Trump run again, and try to go after anybody that supports Trump or that is MAGA or America First or whatever. They don't want their power challenge. So again, they continue with these sham trials. Unfortunately for Liz Cheney though, the biggest hog of them all, the camera hog of January 6th sham trials, has just received some bad news. They're not going to continue to air them ahead of the midterm. So let's go and take a look what we have here. It says the big final January 6th public hearing was just cancelled. That's right. So The Hill reported that the House panel investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol is battling for attention after it delayed its hearing scheduled this week. The first public hearing it was to hold in more than a month, a Hurricane Ian for down on Florida. The hurricane, the first major storm to hit Tampa Bay area, and a century, has captured widespread attention after it was projected to be the major hurricane earlier this week. It made landfall in Florida on Wednesday afternoon as a category for its grant, a scramble to avert a government shutdown by weeks, and is similarly consuming Washington, while some lawmakers are also weighing on how to move forward on a controversial permitting reform bill after it was struck down from a stopgap bill this week. Hanging over everything in its final 5+ weeks of campaigning before the midterms was cash-strapped candidates and allied groups rushing to invest in ads and underground resources, with the control of Congress hanging in balance. This week's scrap January 6 hearings has yet to be put back on the calendar after it was postponed on Tuesday. Though members are signaling they are eager to wrap up their work and make their recommendations before Election Day in November. Of course, Democrats will tell you this is not any safe way for him, politically motivated. And they are trying to influence an election with their mainstream media counterparts or big tech counterparts, right? Everything's on the up and they're going to do whatever they can in order to deliver the truth. Well, at least their truth to the American people, because truth be damned, they want to ensure that they can control Congress entirely, so that way they can continue to ram through some of the most destructive type of bills we've ever seen in this nation. And if you give them this foothold, they are going to utilize it anyway. I don't see it on the calendar for any time soon. Maybe it won't happen. But as of right now, it's been pulled off. And we made a Joe Biden video that's possibly or probably by design, as they've been keeping the guy in the basement and trying to make the conversation about literally anything but Joe Biden, knowing the 2022 midterms are coming up. And he's clearly a massive weak point for the Democrats ahead of the midterms. But when it comes to Sleepy Joe, at the end of the day, he is in fact the president. And regardless of how hard they try to hide them, regardless of how hard they try to pretend as if he doesn't exist, he does exist. His policy track record and performance certainly exists. And every now and then he's forced to have to show up. And it's never, how could we say, confidence inspiring now? Is it when Joe Biden opens his mouth or shows his mug? And so folks, we've been covering the midterms like crazy lately, especially doing all kinds of polling analysis, and I'm continuously talking about September and October being the most important months, because those months are most likely where we're going to see the real results of Joe Biden's economic policies. And well, it's already happening. Support for Biden is cratering as September is turning out to be a slow economic month, just as expected. Republicans are pretty much surging across the board. The most important factor, or some may say the final factor, is in play here. It's Joe Biden. He's going down and he's taking the Democrats with them. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. Let's talk about the current economic situation. Let's talk about Joe Biden's incompetence and of course the implication that it has in terms of elections moving forward. We've got some stuff to get into. Stocks now down $7.6 trillion. Since President Biden took office, the stock market's up to new historic highs. My predecessor's measure of everything, Joe Biden says. Well, to a certain extent, the stock market kind of is the measure of everything. If the market's doing well, it means a country is healthy and is doing well. It means the economy is healthy and people are happy, and people are making money. People are feeding themselves, feeding their families, and they have a little bit extra for a little bit of fun, and maybe even extending some generosity to others. But of course, Joe Biden has diminished the importance of the stock market while simultaneously taking victory laps over the stock market. But that didn't exactly age well, now did it, as the headline today in Joe Biden's economy at the end of September reads: stock market losses wipe out $9 trillion from Americans. Well, falling stock markets have wiped out more than $9 trillion in wealth from U.S. households, putting more pressure on family balance sheets, and spending. American holdings of corporate equities and mutual fund shares fell to $33 trillion at the end of the second quarter, down from $42 trillion at the start of the year, according to data from the Federal Reserve. With major market indexes falling even further since early July, the bond market adding further losses. Market experts say the current wealth loss from financial markets could amount to a total of $9.5 trillion. Folks, this is Joe Biden's economy. He continues to claim. Joe Biden and Fed Chair Jerome Powell continue to say that Americans are fine. There's a cushion of savings, a cushion of equity that Americans hold to make it through these turbulent times. Well, that cushion, folks, is being deflated at record pace. $9 to $10 trillion in American wealth evaporated in Joe Biden's economy. In many cases, that's people's retirement savings. We're seeing credit card debt spike, people's retirement savings tank in the last saving grace. The final little thing here: most people's net worth is tied into their home. We've seen this massive rise in real estate price, which again, co-PM Democrats and Fed Chair Jerome Powell will keep telling us, well, people still have equity in their homes, so they're okay. Well, the housing market is now crashing again, nearly to the point where it might mirror the 2008 crash in the end, probably not to the same extent. But it's not just the housing bubble. It's an everything bubble. The point is, the housing crash is here and it's happening, and so people are losing equity in their homes. Interest rates are incredibly high. People are not refinancing. People are losing cash, they're losing equity, and on top of all of that, their cash is losing value in respect to inflation. Wages are not keeping up with inflation, stocks are not keeping up with inflation. Shouldn't gold's not keeping up with inflation? We're seeing hyperinflation. So pretty much nothing is keeping up with inflation unless you're, I don't know, investing in like a bacon and eggs ETF. I mean, the markets are so incredibly bad that we're not even seeing a bear market rally. We're not even seeing a dead cat bounce. Generally, in a bear market, you'll see a week of steep decline, which is what we saw last week. We had individual days where the markets were down 3%. That's terrible. Absolutely awful. The S&P 500 was at 4,200. And it tanked all the way down to 3,670 or so. Generally, after a tank like that, you'd expect to see a bunch of buying people buying the next little bear market rally, buying the dip, dollar cost averaging into the market. You see a little bear market rally, like we saw from June to early September, and then it continues to fall. Well, we're not even seeing a bear market rally or a dead cat bounce. Now we're at the end of the week already, and the market is either stagnant and then dropping 2% in a single day on Thursday. That means consumer confidence and investor confidence is at an all-time low, mirroring great recessions and depressions of the past. People are not buying into this market. People are not confident in the future. That is the Joe Biden economy. That is the economy, or the economic recovery, that Joe Biden continues to take victory laps and try to take credit over. This guy is done. Folks, October is going to be bloody, it's going to be red, and it's going to have disastrous impacts for the Democrats, or frankly, a good impact for the future of politics in the United States of America. Moving forward long term. This is what happens when you vote for liberals and liberal economic policies, Keynesian economics and endless money printing, and finally people are waking up to that exact fact. Speaking of a dead cat bounce, Joe Biden's approval rating also saw a similar little affect, bouncing back to the low 40s. Well, already we're starting to see cracks into Joe Biden's little bounce back. Biden's approval plummets, as most Democrats look elsewhere for 2024. A new ABC News/Washington Post poll found that Biden's approval ratings are plummeting, and most Democrat voters said the party should replace Biden as its nominee for president in 2024. In the November midterm elections ahead, registered voters divided 47 to 46% between Republican and Democratic candidates in their House district, historically not enough to prevent the typical first midterm losses, and one likely voter model has 41% for the Republicans and 46% for the Democrats. Split that likely voters screen is the most relevant. Then moving on to Joe Biden's approval, only 39% of voters said that they approved Joe Biden's job performance, while 53% disapprove on the economy. Biden's approval rating is 36%. And 57% disapprove, a 21-point deficit. The terrible polling for Biden is a bad sign for Democrats who are trying to hold on to the Senate and the House. Joe Biden's the final factor. Folks, this is what I'm telling you: his economy, his performance, his policy is going to sink the Democrats. I mean, even former Obama economist Larry Summers can admit that all of this is Joe Biden's fault. I mean, where is this guy going? What is he doing? He is so lost. Who would have predicted that electing this guy into the most powerful position on the globe was a bad idea, especially considering all the warning signs that we were seeing that he was not really in control, but that rather there was a radical left-wing element that he was beholding to. Who would have seen this coming? Who would have seen this as a bad idea? Well, folks, like usual, hindsight is 20/20, and I think for the most part there's a serious level of hindsight, people looking back questioning what did we do. Serious voter regret, Democrat voter regret, Biden voter regret that is continuously expanding. We are seeing it in the numbers screen for likely voters. Republicans, by the way, just took over in generic congressional ballot data averages. The sentiment is clear, voter registration patterns are clear. And now we had an extremely red September, was terrible economic metrics, the worst seen in generations. Americans are blaming it on Sleepy Brandon. And that's pretty much going to be the final nail in the coffin. It's the final factor, like I've been saying, and it's also happening right on cue, exactly as predicted. Take a look at what's going to happen here in October as we continue to follow all of these numbers, all of these metrics, and what that's going to mean as it leads into November. It's going to be bad, and it's Joe Biden's fault. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Thank you very much. www